just begin to melt away. I can't explain it. I absolutely can't explain it because it's a supernatural thing. It's a supernatural thing whenever you truly learn how to love your enemies. They don't deserve it. Lord knows they don't deserve it. They definitely don't deserve it. But here's the thing. Neither did you. Neither did you. I've got people, and I could go down a list, and I could name them by name, and I could tell you what they did. I could tell you the date that they did it. I can tell you the time that they did it, because I'm one of those guys that you do it, I'm locking it away. I'm locking it away. I don't easily forget. I will forgive, but that doesn't mean I'm going to forget necessarily. I got a pretty good memory. So I'm one of those guys, and then all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, I'm like, God, they don't deserve this. And in the middle of my prayer, God, they don't deserve these blessings. They don't deserve this prosperity. They don't deserve this stuff. But neither did I. Let's put up the next verse. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. Be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. So not only is it in order for you to get forgiveness, you have to give forgiveness. But we have a living example of true forgiveness. All of you raised your hand and said, you know what, I'm not perfect. Or all of you kept your hand down and said, you know what, I'm not perfect. We all make mistakes. We all mess up. But what would have happened if Jesus said, you know what, I don't feel like going to the cross today. You know what, I don't feel like taking 39 stripes on my back so that these people can have salvation. You know what, I don't really want to carry that cross up Golgotha. That doesn't sound fun to me. I don't want that crown of thorns pressed in my head, and I don't want them to pluck my beard and to spit on me while I'm trying to do something. They don't deserve that. They don't deserve that. Where would we be if God said, you know what, you don't deserve my forgiveness? So who are we with all our mess-ups, all our mistakes, all our failures to sit here and tell somebody that they don't deserve forgiveness? Who am I? When the God of all creation said, you know what? No matter how many times you mess up, I'll forgive you. I went to a cross so that you could have forgiveness. I shed my blood so that you could have forgiveness. And you're not willing to forgive those who hurt you. What a powerful thing. Powerful thing. About to close. Today is the 11th anniversary of 9/11. How many of you remember where you were whenever you found out what had happened 9/11? It's one of those things. I was sitting in my 5th grade classroom. And I can remember a teacher coming in, and they came in and they shared with my teacher what had happened, and school was out for the day, obviously, because our nation was in tragedy and was in mourning. I didn't really understand it then, and honestly, we see the reports and we see the documentaries and we see all the things that have come out since 9/11, but today, I spent probably an hour on YouTube today watching the footage of what happened. I was 9 when it happened? Didn't mean much. Today it means a whole lot. I sat there and I began to watch this footage. And I sat in the library. If you would have seen me, you would have laughed because I was crying. I'm a sensitive guy, so it's just what happened. I was crying, and I'm thinking about what it would have been like to be in that situation. What it would have been like to have a family member that was involved with that. And I'm sitting there, and I already knew. I woke up this morning because I didn't know how I was going to end this message. This is a hard message already. I didn't know how I was going to conclude it. Didn't know how I was going to end it. And I woke up this morning, and it was like God just kind of spoke this to me. I began to think about, what if I put myself in that situation where those terrorists had taken the life of my family members, what would I do? What would I do? Would I be able to forgive them? Or would I constantly, for the rest of my life, have to hold a grudge? What I want us to do for a second, we've got a short video. The last time she saw her husband, Tom, was the morning of September 11th, 2001. It started as a typical day for them in their 18-year marriage. He had an early morning. He was going off for an early morning flight. He kissed Cheryl goodbye. Then during her devotional time a few hours later, Cheryl kept receiving phone calls from her friends. And Chris and Bob kept asking about Tom and his whereabouts. Finally, Chris told Cheryl that a plane had been hijacked and to turn on the television. Cheryl tried paging and calling Tom, getting no response on either one. She then tried to call a few other American airline pilots to see if they knew what flight Tom was on. When she did finally get through to someone, no one would tell her what was going on. Soon people started to come to her house with looks of concern on their faces. Then her pastor came to her house. Shortly after this, a big black car drove up to the house, and several men in dark suits came to the door. One of the men proceeded to tell Cheryl that the American Airlines Flight 11 had been hijacked, crashed into the World Trade Center. There was no survivors, and that Tom had been the co-pilot of that flight. Shocked, overwhelmed, she felt as though her heart had been ripped out. She had to hold on to her pastor's arms to keep from collapsing. As she cried, she realized she had to tell her teenage children, Jennifer and Tommy, what had happened. Her friends Jeff and Vicky brought Cheryl to the school. At the principal's office, Cheryl told her children, Jesus has called Daddy home. They then clung to each other and cried. Though it was comforting to know that Tom was with Jesus, Cheryl wondered how she would survive without him. Friends and family soon heard the news and railed about Cheryl and the children. Cheryl remembered one of the last things that Tom told her. If anything ever happens to me, you just trust God. God will get you through it. Just surround yourself with loving people, people who know Christ, people who will surround you in Christ-like love. The first time Cheryl had to deal with this forgiveness was when she went to the World Trade Center to participate in the Victim Compensation Fund on July 8th, 2002. When she finally arrived at Ground Zero, Cheryl felt overwhelmed. Thoughts flooded her about how the events might have unfolded that day. She looked into the pit where the remains of the building once stood, and as she looked at the remains, her eyes fixed on the only still structure left standing. Can we turn that one light off? It was the shape of a cross. She kept looking from the pit to the cross, and her eyes focused on the cross. You can put up the next picture. She said, Lord, they killed my husband. But by her own account, you can turn the light back on. By her own account, she says that she literally pictured herself at the foot of Jesus' cross. She felt like God was telling her to forgive the terrorist who did this. She asked him why. She felt like the Lord told her, because I forgive you. Cheryl didn't necessarily want to, but from then on, she made a commitment to actively forgive the terrorists for what they did to Tom and what they did to this nation. She felt as though she were kneeling at the base of the cross, guilty of her own offenses against God and others, with God's forgiveness staring her in the face. At that moment, she felt gratitude for what Christ did on the cross for the sins of humanity. And she felt that she would be reunited with Tom someday. But she also realized that she had a choice to forgive the evil of 9/11 and the pain it caused her, or remain in hatred. Cheryl chose to forgive. What a story. What a story. Musicians, if you want to come and get ready to play Oh How He Loves, we're about to end. I could have picked from hundreds of stories about crazy cases of forgiveness. There were plenty of them. This one struck a chord with me, being that it was 9/11. Powerful, powerful story. I don't know that I would have been able to do what Cheryl did. I'd like to say that I would have been able to, but until you're put in that situation, do you really know? Could have picked from a ton of different stories. But really, there's one perfect story of forgiveness. Jesus is hanging on Calvary. He's been beaten. He's been bruised. He's wearing a crown of thorns. Blood is dripping off of him, and it's just pooling up on the ground at the base of that cross. People are standing there and they're mocking and they're shouting at him. He's not the king. He's been made fun of. He's been belittled. He's been hurt. He's been crucified. Yet somehow through it all, one of the last things Jesus says, Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They don't understand what they're doing. There are people sitting in this place tonight. Close your eyes for just a second. There are people sitting in this place tonight who are hurt. You are bruised. You feel like you've been crucified. You feel like you've been destroyed. You feel like you've been attacked and belittled and put down. You're hurting. You don't understand why. You're sitting there and you're saying, but God, they hurt me. They hurt my family. Because of them, I'm having to deal with things that I shouldn't have to deal with. Because of them, I'm in a pit. I'm in a prison. I'm in a valley. And it's not anything that I did on my own. What do you mean you want me to forgive them? That doesn't make sense. I don't get that. But if we go back to the story of Joseph, the way that he ends it is he says, look guys, you've got to understand. What I understand now is that what you meant for evil, you tried to hurt me. You tried to destroy me. You tried to tear me down. You tried to lock me up. You tried to make it so that I would never be anything for God. But here I am. And because of the hurt that you caused me to endure, I am in a position where I am going to be the cause of salvation for many, many, many people. Some of you are sitting there, you're saying, why God? Why me? Doesn't make sense and it's not fair. And I don't like it. And God's saying, just wait. God's saying, if you could just peek behind the curtain and see where I want to bring you and see what I want to do with you, you would understand that the hurt that you're going through now is for a reason. The pain that you're going through now is for a reason. It's because I'm trying to make you stronger. It's because I'm trying to bring you to a place of surrender. It's because I'm trying to bring you to a place where you can't depend on yourself or anybody else. You have to depend on me. And you're faced with a choice tonight. What do you do? Do you harbor the bitter feelings that human nature would tell you you have a right to harbor? Or do you say, you know what, God, it's time to let it go? It's time to let it go. Because when you begin to give forgiveness, you get forgiveness. When you begin to give love and mercy, you get love and mercy. And when you begin to draw closer to Jesus, no matter who comes and tries to hurt you, Jesus' loving arms are there to surround you, to embrace you and say, you know what? No matter what anybody else does, I love you.
Thank you for listening to the Lions for the Lamb audio podcast. The mission of Lions for the Lamb is to connect Southeastern with Christ. Lions for the Lamb meets every Tuesday night for dinner and fellowship, with service to start at 7:30 on the second floor of the War Memorial Student Union. We would love to have you at our next service. Thank you, and may God bless you.